Welcome to Orange Weekly, presented by Krause Health. 6 feet away from Nate Mink, I'm Brent. Coming up, a new low against Liberty. Dino Babers sees a light through the darkness. And record-setting underdogs against Clemson. We'll get to that matchup with the Tigers coming up, Nate. But first, boy, we sat here a week ago and at least brought up the possibility that Syracuse could lose to Liberty, given the decimated roster they're putting on the football field right now. But I honestly didn't believe it would happen. It did. It's not only the worst loss under Dino Babers, it's one of the worst losses Syracuse football's ever had.
Yeah, I mean, Liberty, Brent, was ahead by 2 scores really most of that game, and it ended up winning by 3 scores. So it really wasn't all that competitive, and you're right, it is one of the low points in this program's recent history. You know, after the game, I wrote it, year 5 right now basically feels like year 1. And when you think about all the young players that are playing right now for Syracuse, when you think about the new coaches that came over last offseason, this is got to be treated in a lot of ways like year 1, and it's going to be another slow rebuild up to where they are competitive again.
It's going to be interesting to see, Nate, because 2020 is somewhat of a lost cause now. You start thinking about 2021, you can have the grad transfers without the 1-year wait. You can have seniors come back because of COVID and the NCAA allowing that, and of course your normal influx of recruits coming in the class of 2021. So the irony is next season, Dino Babers is going to have what he's always asked for and what he's always wanted, and that's depth. But you got to get through this year first.
Well, everyone else is going to have depth too. You know, it's not like Syracuse is going to be the only one that's going to get to play with more than 85 scholarship players. So there's going to be a talent gap that Syracuse has to close eventually too. But I think the biggest thing as we look forward to next year, Brent, is just getting all the guys that are hurt, you hope, back healthy completely. If they have to have any kind of off-season procedure, that they get that cleaned up and they're able to return. If there is a normal spring practice back in time for spring ball, because so many of these young guys just didn't have any type of spring ball to go through, didn't have any sort of normal summer. Everything was disjointed. The young guys that are playing, you know, the Rob Hannas, the Marlowe Waxes, the Stephon Thompsons, Sean Tucker on offense, they get another year with the strength and conditioning staff. I think that's extremely valuable as they start to build their bodies up. And yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a grind, but it's in a lot of ways very similar to where they were at the beginning of Dino's tenure. Is they played a lot of, you think back to the line of scrimmage, they played a lot of young offensive and defensive linemen those first couple years, and the payoff came. I think we're in a similar position here.
Of course, a lot of people are wondering about the quarterback position, Nate. Thank goodness Syracuse has a 5-year redshirt senior, to kind of carry them through right now. But they're wondering about the redshirt freshmen and the freshmen, and Jacobian Morgan, Dylan Markowitz, David Summers. There's just not enough time right now in terms of reps they've had at practice to put them on the field maybe this week against Clemson or next week against Wake Forest. But when is that time going to come? Because I think, given how this year is going to go, they're going to want to see what they got in these freshman quarterbacks.
I agree. I think they would ideally like to at least get them out there at some point this year, Brent, but it's really going to be on each individual's clock and when they're ready. They came in the summer, specifically the 2 true freshmen, Dylan and Jacobian. They did not have a spring ball. They did not have anything close to a normal summer. When August practice did roll around, you know, they really only had enough reps to go around for DeVito and Culpepper. These guys really only started practicing the last week and a half with Syracuse's offense. Before then, they were really running the scout team, which is running the opponent's plays. So they're getting acclimated to how Syracuse does things. Dino last week said they had some deer in the headlight type looks. That's to be expected. So right now you're just dealing with a really, really green quarterback room. And as they get more practices under their belt, as they get more comfortable, as the coaching staff recognizes what their strengths and weaknesses are, then there's a chance that you get to see them in November. But right now, Culpepper's really your most experienced and your most knowledgeable quarterback in that room.
Yeah, Rex, 19 of 40 last week, 3 touchdowns and an interception against Liberty. And the Orange go from one end of the spectrum, a team in Liberty that just entered the FBS level of college football 3 years ago, to its most powerful force. We'll preview that matchup with Clemson coming up. But first, let's hear from Syracuse head coach Dino Babers. It's Syracuse Soundbites.
I am really trying to stay mentally, physically, and spiritually sharp because I think that there's nothing but good that's going to come out of this. In every decision that I make, I'm trying to make it clear. Emotions always involved, but I'm really trying to go deeper than that and push by that and see the greater good in things. And we've got a lot of guys that are playing, which is usually not very good, but down the road, those guys are going to all get better. And hopefully, I get an opportunity to see all that.
Nate, 46.5. As we tape this, Syracuse is that number as an underdog to Clemson. It's the biggest underdog number Syracuse has been a part of in its history, one of the biggest point spreads Syracuse football's ever been involved in. They were like a 48-point favorite over Central Connecticut State, some other big point spreads against teams where it's FBS versus FCS level, but just two straight-up ACC or FBS teams, biggest point spread they've ever been involved in. It's amazing to think about.
Well, that just goes to show you what Vegas might think of this. They look at this as an FBS, FCS matchup. And given the scholarship limitations for the Syracuse roster right now, they're not far off from being an FCS, level team in terms of numbers. I mean, the limit for scholarships at that level is 63. Syracuse is below 60. So very, very comparable situation. Brent, there's really only one recent example of a team pulling off what Syracuse is trying to pull off, and that's Stanford over Southern Cal in 2007. That was Jim Harbaugh's first year. Scott Schaefer, believe it or not, was actually the defensive coordinator for that Stanford team. But that was even a two-loss USC team, and that was a Stanford team, like I said, it was Harbaugh's first year, so it was all about culture change and everything like that. This is Dino's fifth year. The roster is a shell of itself. Clemson, I don't see them losing 2 games this year. They might lose 1 in the CFP, but I don't see them losing more than 1. So I just think this is too big of a task. I don't see any way Syracuse wins this game.
Clemson's Clemson. They're the #1 team in the country. They've got 2 Heisman potential finalists and quarterback Trevor Lawrence, running back Travis Etienne. They've got a terrific wide receiver in Amari Rodgers, a lot of stars emerging on the defensive side of the ball. But, Nate, we're not going to see those players a lot in this game. Trevor Lawrence last week had 5 touchdowns at halftime against Georgia Tech. I would anticipate maybe those similar numbers, maybe Travis Etienne going off, given how Syracuse has struggled to stop the run. If anything, we're going to get to know Clemson's backups a lot in this game because they're going to see a ton of time. I've got Syracuse losing to Clemson 66-7.
So you have that point spread holding true. You would even go up to 50 for a point spread. I have Syracuse losing the game 52-7, which I have them covering just barely.
Just by that.
Yeah. But it's going to be a long day, Brent. It's to me, it really is going to feel like that 2013 Florida State game when Syracuse went down to Florida State. Florida State had, I think, an NFL draft pick or an NFL player at every single position on their 22 starting lineup. And Syracuse obviously came in there as a massive underdog and left with a 59-3 loss in Tallahassee. I just see, again, a long day, but it's really, you have to look beyond result. It's really about getting your guys that you're going down there with, making sure they're all coming back healthy to be able to try to find ways to win the next couple weeks when you do have some more winnable opponents with Wake Forest and Boston College.
Hopefully Dabo Swinney takes mercy on the Orange. The Tigers going for their 5th national championship game appearance in 6 years. That's Orange Weekly presented by Krause Health. For Nate Mink, I'm Brent Axe. We'll talk to you next time.